Picture this. It's somewhere around 4 in the morning on the Western Front. Maybe the Meuse-Argonne, maybe the Marne. After a while, the exact place stops making much difference. The sky hasn't shifted yet. It's that flat gray that sits between night and morning without committing to either. The mud under your boots feels exactly like it did yesterday and the day before that. Not quite solid, not quite liquid, just something you move through. Your hands are already stiff before you've really started the day, and before anything else settles in, before the noise, before whatever orders are coming, your stomach reminds you it's there. Not sharply, just enough. There's no real answer to it. You reach into your pack, hard bread and coffee. What you find first is something that was never meant to change. Hard bread, thick, dry, baked to last for months. It had already been standard decades earlier, long before the American Expeditionary Forces arrived in France in 1917, and it was still doing exactly the same job. There wasn't much reason to improve it. It didn't spoil. It didn't fall apart. And that was enough. You don't bite into it straight away unless you have to. It's something you work on, breaking it down, softening it, if there's anything to soften it with. Coffee helps when it's there. American soldiers were issued real ground coffee, which was more important than it might sound. It was boiled in a mess tin more often than not, coming out strong and bitter, sometimes leaving grit at the bottom. Still, it was the first thing many men reached for. Not because it tasted good exactly, but because it marked the beginning of something. A small point of structure before everything else blurred together. Men talked about it more than you'd expect, complained about it, waited for it, noticed immediately when it was missing. You hold the cup a little longer than necessary, letting the heat sit in your hands. And then it's gone. The bread doesn't change. Corned beef from the tin. At some point, and the timing is never as reliable as it should be, there's the tin. Canned Willy. You hear the name before you get used to opening one. Canned corned beef sat at the center of the ration system. Compact, preserved, designed to be eaten without preparation. Each man carried it as part of his reserve ration, which on paper wasn't meant to be opened unless ordered. Out here, that line blurred quickly. You open it with a knife if you have one, or whatever else works. The smell comes through immediately. Salt, fat, and that faint metallic edge from the tin itself. And it lingers on your hands longer than you expect. Most eat it cold, directly from the can. It's quicker. And quicker matters. No one treats it like a proper meal. It's there to do a job, and it does. Bacon from the pack. Every so often, the ration shifts slightly. Bacon shows up, salt cured and tightly packed. Another piece of food designed to last rather than impress. What sets it apart is what it becomes when heat is involved. If the night stays quiet long enough and someone is willing to risk a small fire, it can be cooked. The smell carries further than you'd think. For a moment, it doesn't belong to the trench at all. It suggests something else entirely. Those moments don't last. Most of the time, it's eaten as it is. Cold, dense, heavily salted. It's filling in a way that's noticeable, even if it isn't particularly welcome. Some hold on to it longer than they should. Others trade it, often for coffee, which says enough about how priorities settle over time. Fresh bread. Then, occasionally, something arrives that feels different before you even touch it. Bread that hasn't been hardened for storage. It's baked miles behind the line and brought forward at night by ration parties, moving through ground that doesn't make anything easy. By the time it reaches you, it's already begun to change. A little stale, sometimes damp, carrying traces of the journey. You brush it off without thinking. What stands out isn't just the texture. It's that it wasn't made to last indefinitely. It was made to be eaten. That distinction is small, but it's there. You tear it apart rather than cutting it. Some eat immediately. Others keep a piece a little longer, not because they need to, but because having it feels like something. For a short while, it shifts the day slightly. Then, things settle back. Bread with sugar. Sweetness doesn't arrive often enough to become routine. Sugar does, though. It's part of the standard ration, even when other things don't come through. Without much else to work with, it ends up on bread. Not evenly, not carefully measured, just enough to change the taste. And with that small change, the pace of eating shifts without anyone really deciding it should. It doesn't fill you, but it interrupts the sameness. And that counts for more than it sounds. Meat and bread together. Every now and then, things line up in a way they aren't guaranteed to. Bread and meat at the same time. It's simple, put together quickly, eaten just as quickly, but it feels different from everything else. There's something about assembling it yourself, even in the most basic way, that separates it from just opening a tin. It doesn't last long enough to think about. You eat it while it's there. Canned hash. There are also moments when the food arrives already combined. Corned beef hash, meat and potato pressed together. It offers something heavier than most of what you usually get. It sits differently once you've eaten it in a way that becomes noticeable later rather than immediately. If there's a chance to heat it, it improves. If not, it's eaten as it comes. Either way, it carries you a little further. That difference doesn't need to be pointed out. Hot food from the field kitchen. And then there are the days when something arrives that hasn't been sitting in a tin. Field kitchens operate behind the lines, cooking in larger quantities and sending food forward when conditions allow. Getting it there is never simple. It depends on timing, on safety, on whether the route can even be used. Not every delivery makes it through. When one does, the change is immediate, even if it's subtle. You don't open it yourself. It's handed to you. That alone shifts how it feels. Sometimes it's stew, sometimes something thinner, sometimes just hot coffee again, but in a form that feels different from what you've been carrying. There are also moments when civilians are involved. The YMCA, the Salvation Army, offering coffee or donuts near the lines. The food matters, but so does the way it's given. That part lingers. Bean or thick soup. When the kitchens hold steady, the food becomes more substantial. Bean soup had long been part of American military meals, and it carried over into this setting. It's thicker, heavier, and noticeably more filling than most of what reaches the front. Men gather a little closer when it's served. There's no need to rush through it in the same way. It allows for a slower pace, even if only briefly. The contrast between having it and not having it is clear enough without anyone saying it out loud. Cheese and crackers. When that line of supply breaks again, everything narrows. What remains is what you carry. Hard cheese, chosen because it keeps well, cut into pieces that are meant to last longer than you prefer. It's eaten with whatever else is available. Bread, crackers, or nothing at all. You make it stretch without really thinking about it. There's a rhythm to it that doesn't need explaining. Chocolate. Beyond that, there's the emergency ration. Compact, dense, built around high-energy chocolate that isn't meant for ordinary use. It's something you carry for when everything else fails. Officially, it's not to be touched without orders. Out here, that line doesn't always hold. A small piece is broken off. The rest is kept back. At some point, eating stops being about hunger and starts becoming something else. A way of measuring how far what you have will take you. That change doesn't announce itself. It just settles in. Improvised meals. And when nothing arrives at all, the process becomes something else entirely. Whatever remains. Scraps from earlier, bits of biscuit, occasional additions like rice or vegetables, if they've made it through. It's brought together into something that can pass as a meal. If it can be cooked, it is. If not, it isn't. There's no plan behind it, just a series of small decisions based on what's still there. There was a structure behind all of this. Food prepared behind the lines, rations carried forward, reserves held back for when movement stopped. On paper, it added up. Out here, it came down to something simpler. What reached you? What didn't? And what you had left in your hands when the gap between the two became clear. So eating didn't follow a schedule. It happened in pieces, in between everything else, and it was enough.